Enjoy your meeting.
Give it just a minute here, Richard.
Just a reminder, today's meeting is being recorded.
Of course it is. Good morning. I'm David Haddavis with CCNG, and we're here today with Richrd Kinney. He's the head of Global Contact Center Marketing for Plantronics, and we're going to pick his brain on some latest updates. Focus for the topic today is on analytics and automation. This is a conversation that is very relevant. Just recently came from a meeting that CCNG did with one of our members, a large bank. A lot of conversation about analytics. I think generally speaking, people know they're headed in that direction. They're not sure exactly how they're going to get there or where they're going to get there or how they're going to justify getting there. So automation and analytics are tied together, and that's our subject matter today. So Richrd, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
So good morning or good afternoon from here, David, and thanks for hosting me again. Really look forward to these discussions.
Likewise, likewise. Why don't you kick off and give us kind of a general overview from the Plantronics point of view, what's happening trends-wise from, as you see it, in analytics and automation?
So it's probably good. I think since the last time we spoke, I've been to Enterprise Connect, I've been to HDI, and I've been to a number of other smaller shows across Europe as well. And there's a number of different trends and activities that are taking place. But one thing is fundamentally becoming clear out of everything is that the cost pressure to remove the costs, to reduce costs while still maintaining quality is still incredibly present within all of our service organizations. More and more expectations are being driven higher and higher, with organizations talking about personalization, with organizations holding more customer data to try and offer this personal service. And again, with organizations realizing that service is a real big differentiator. Products are becoming, increasingly a commodity. So it's this big pressure of how organizations are being asked to deliver better and better service at a lower and lower cost. So the sort of channel shift that we're seeing as well, I think this is the first year where we'll see digital interactions exceed voice interactions for the first time. So we've been promised that for a while, and we've been promised that, okay, that would reduce costs significantly. But what we're finding is that about 40% of those customers who are connecting to us via self-service or digital are still phoning into our contact center to either confirm or to escalate because something hasn't worked. So all of these trends are sort of going on, the idea of there being fewer phone calls, but each of those phone calls is much more important to the business. So those are the sort of real big trends that I'm picking up around the world over the last few months. And to some degree they are just continuations of trends that we've seen before, but they're coming more acutely nowadays.
I would echo that. That was exactly discussed in a meeting I was out yesterday, that while the expectation and the hope was the shift to digital communication, in fact, the bank host said for the very first time their digital interactions did exceed their voice interactions. That was the good news, the predictive news, if you will. The not predictive news was that the voice volume didn't go down, it went up. So it's not only, everything's increasing. They also talked about this pie chart of costs in running service, the importance of service as a differentiator, as you mentioned. Do you see that this latest shift in automation and analytics is going to help reduce some of the staff costs? Or, as was discussed, actually those calls are more important and we anticipate staff costs going up because we have to pay for a higher quality agent. How do you see that unfolding?
So there's probably three different ways that organizations are looking at their staffing approach going forward. The first one is this idea of almost back to the old switchboard style of the frontline employee is not an expert in everything the company does, but they're an expert in collaboration. And it's their job to connect the customer into the pockets of knowledge around the business. So there's some companies that are looking at unified communications and collaboration to connect those frontline employees out externally or internally. The other one is the one that you probably just mentioned, is that the frontline employee becomes more and more and more skilled. So that's one area that people are looking at. But the issue we've got with that one is that wage expectations in that area will be rising really quickly. And I don't think many organizations are prepared for that sort of high level of wage and high level of employee working on that frontline customer service. So to some degree, what we're seeing is almost a middle role. And that's really where analytics comes in, is that you've got a reasonably good employee, very good at service, but they're being helped by analytics to prompt them towards the next step. So you don't have this massive wage expectations, which is what people are trying to get around, but you do have this ability to start delivering better service based on activities that have happened before, other information that you know about the customer. So that's the one area that we're starting to see. We've seen organizations explore those two other different models, but that one in the middle is the one that's being focused on at the moment. And we mentioned earlier on as well about sort of the difference between automation and analytics. It surprises me that automation has a benefit that is only just being started to be understood within contact centers. And the benefit of automation is actually in staff retention. We know that within contact centers, we've got about 25% employee turnover per year. And when you're looking at about $10,000 to replace an employee, that's quite a significant cost for some organizations. And to some degree, the reason those people are moving is that the job is always the same. It's just routine work. So if you can use automation to get rid of that mundane, repetitive work in the background, you can let those employees focus more on the higher level tasks. And by sort of elevating their role a little bit more, you free them up to do better work, and you free them up to actually stay with the company a little bit more because the work is actually more rewarding for them to do. So it's quite a surprising cost benefit that we've picked up for automation.
Any threat to Plantronics business with this automation? It seems like we hear that a lot, but I'm trying to get my hands around how that would impact your business. What do you see there?
Well, it's an area that we look at an awful lot. If you read some of the big press coming out of Silicon Valley, and I think Facebook's, F8 or their conference they held recently, that you see the usual words, the death of the contact center, because they're using chatbots as automation. But if you go and talk to many companies, for them, automation is, they define it as macros. It's just repeating mundane steps in the background. And that's really where we see a lot of automation, is that it's a path that's really well known to contact centers. It is taking away some of that routine, mundane work, and it's letting that employee focus more on the really good parts of their role. So for us, we've known that many jobs are, we've known that many interactions are going to go to self-service and to digital, and that's fully expected. We've seen that coming since the days of IVR. But actually for us, it's actually quite good because it raises the profile of that employee within the contact center. I've always had a beef with anybody that calls them agents. I don't like that word. I think that implies repetition work. I think that the work people do is much more important. And automation is actually just going to prove that. It's raising the profile of these people. They're getting better tools. They're getting higher budgets. And for us, that means they get the better quality headsets because they want those better tools for an organization as well.
And it sounds like that would offset any feelings of being threatened for the employee.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen, I think you mentioned it as well, that the people are not moving away from voice. Voice is the escalation, and people will still want voice. And each of those voice calls are actually getting longer now because we're dealing with more complex issues. So wherever we go, we're seeing that the volume of calls might drop, but the actual voice minutes overall for an organizations are probably slowly creeping up. So the staffing demands are actually the same for all organizations.
Give us maybe an example or some of the more specifics on how Plantronics is getting into analytics and automation this year.
So we've had our worldwide sales meeting this year, just fairly recently, and the big thing that we focused on is the launch of one of our new software products. And the reason we're able to launch software is that the really big trend in organizations away from hard phones on the desk into PC-based soft phones. Whatever vendor they're coming from, then suddenly this gives us as Plantronics the ability to connect into a PC through a USB port. And that suddenly gives us lots of power to run DSP-connected devices and lots of ability to connect and send information to and from the PC. And really early days yet, but little examples that we've looked at so far as a sort of proof of concepts is that if somebody disconnects the QD on one of our headsets, we can send a signal into the ACD package and say, this person is no longer available. So we've automated a simple, easy action. We've taken away one of those many things that an employee has to focus on. And to be honest, if they've got 12, 13 different software packages on their PC, which isn't unusual, just automating one of those simple tasks can help them a little bit during their working day. You put the QD back on, then they're made available again in that position. Other options that we're looking at as well in terms of analytics is the idea of when do the employees press the mute button? And if they're pressing that mute button an awful lot, why is that? Is that because they're looking for help from some of their peers because they're struggling? And it's not an excuse to go and sort of ask that employee to sort of train harder and work harder. It's thinking, actually, do we need to educate this person so they can help deliver better service?
Right.
So for us, it's a little toe in the water of analytics. And we're aware that for many people, analytics is a really big investment. So looking at our role here is how can we help people get onto that train? How can we give them just a little taster of things that can help them improve the service they deliver? So for us at the moment, no, we think that analytics is a fantastic idea, and we are rapidly figuring out what our place in that is, and we've just got that started at the moment.
Well, it's rewarding to hear that because actually, again, a lot of the conversations that we've had this year at CCNG events with members is not just around the loop of customer experience, but to close that loop with employee experience. I'm not going to use the word agent because her hair will go like that, so I'm not going to do that. But really to see it as a whole picture, and your approach fits into that quite nicely, is that you have to address both sides of the coin in order to move the needle on your overall service initiative. So wrap up and tell us where members should get started. What from your perspective, how can you help them get launched on this?
Well, I think the first thing is to sort of take a look at the platform that they're using on their desktops at the moment. The platform of the future is undoubtedly soft phones. So if they're using those already, start to look at some of our new products that are coming through, which is the DA series with digital headsets. And with that platform in place, we can start to get you much more insight into what's going on the devices. Analytics is, sometimes it's big data, but for us at the moment, it's almost little data. We can start to tell you what the different configurations are on that device, so that if you plug a device in, it's automatically pre-configured the right way for the best employee experience and the best customer experience. So as we talked about earlier on, if there are fewer number of phone calls coming in, each of those ones that do make it to us is much more important. So you need that really good audio quality to make it a good customer experience. And that's where we're starting to look at the moment, is the software and the devices that drive that. And talk to any of your sort of local Plantronics employees or distributors. They can tell you all about that because we've all been really well briefed and motivated on it at our recent worldwide sales meeting.
Wonderful, wonderful. Last point, just because I was thinking about it, how does this impact the remote workforce? Because again, we continue to hear about, not so much in the traditional sense, let's set up shop out there, but back to my bank example yesterday, let's leverage human assets we have at the branch level for helping with certain types of call volumes or call types. So your view of analytics, how does that impact a remote worker?
Well, you mentioned the employee experience there, and that's one real good area for us that we can look at for using our analytics. And those remote employees don't have that great access to IT support that somebody within the office does. So if they're sent a headset, they won't have the IT support to plug it in and configure it in the best way. But if we can do that remotely through this software, this analytics package, we can help them plug the device in, it's automatically configured, we can check whether there are any conflicts with the audio devices on their system, and then we can understand that, have they got the right firmware, have they got everything set up exactly the right way, so that it's not immediately an analytics that measures their interactions or measures the customer experience, but it really does make sure that they get a good employee experience with those headsets. And like you said, we're seeing more and more people think, how can we benefit, how can we get access to the skills that are present within our organization, regardless of where they are? And this is one of the really good ways to do that.
Well, you guys are dead on as usual. We appreciate you taking time with us today. And again, we'll look forward to the recurring time we get with you in terms of video interviews. I know our members appreciate it. I certainly appreciate it. And we know the thought leadership is on global, so the fact that we can tap into you there at the UK is wonderful. Thank you again for taking time with us today, Richrd.
Well, thank you again for you, David, and also thanks for all the sort of feedback and kudos from your members as well. And for the next one, I'd love to see if there's any questions that they've particularly got, to see if we can help them answer those questions.
Excellent idea. We'll start searching now. Thank you so much.